shower.
Now he's live. He wants to get that's the best part. The banter is the best part, like in the beginning of podcasts and stuff.
Doesn't only have to be in the beginning.
It can be
We're going to be live any second now. Watch out what you're saying, guys.
Any second. That's what she said.
Okay. I'm watching an ad now. I guess we're live. Okay. So there's already one question in.
Ooh.
Let me read that. So welcome to the viewers. This is the TRT and Hormone Optimization YouTube channel. And as the guests today, we have Ali Gilbert and Gil T. Welcome, guys.
Thank
Gil
you.
and Gilbert.
That's it.
Do I mispronounce your name, Ali?
No, you pronounced it perfect.
Okay. The first question in the chat box, it was there a moment ago. Now it's gone, probably because we're live, but whatever. It was, why are some guys doing better on sub-Q TRT injections than on intramuscular? There's someone here that says with 2 injections of 50 milligrams a week, he got his levels up to 1200 nanograms per deciliter total and only 800 nanograms per deciliter on sub-Q. So why the difference in some men? Don't know.
You mean on IM? He got 800 on IM and he got 1200 on sub-Q.
He got 800 on sub-Q and 1200 on IM. And he's asking why are some others doing better on sub-Q?
I mean, I can answer this, but Ali, ladies first, if you have something for him.
What do you feel better on? But this is Gil's department.
Okay, so as we know that hormones are very individual and different people are going to do differently on different aspects. You have to understand that your total testosterone is one metric of so many that we measure. And a big factor that a lot of people keep overlooking is the rate of metabolism and excretion, or essentially the pharmacokinetics of the medication. If your SHBG levels are low, you're going to likely excrete your medication quicker than someone who has higher or normalized SHBG. SHBG acts as a buffer. It's kind of like a savings account, and it kind of trickles out as you need it. So you have your checking and your savings. Think of your checking account as your free T. SHBG bound testosterone is your savings account. Your checking goes down, you move money over from your savings to bring it back up. If your savings account doesn't have the binding capacity or the availability to hold on to that hormone or money per se in this analogy, then you're essentially going to be using more of it in the free testosterone department. It's going to run out quicker and you may need more frequent injections. So someone who finds that their sub-Q total T level is better than it is on IM likely suffers from low SHBG, and therefore they're probably going to do fine on IM if they went with more frequent injections. You have to remember that the time from your previous injection to your blood draw is actually going to be on a downward slope, and you may be measuring at a trough, and therefore the sub-Q may be slower to excrete and come back with a, I guess, falsely higher T level because it's just a snapshot in time. People put way too much emphasis in the numbers. At the end of the day, it's how do you feel overall? What is more adherable to you and your lifestyle? What do you feel less anxious about? Some people just don't like the IM route for whatever reason. They're afraid of needles, whatever. Do what works for you, experiment with it, and find a sweet spot. It's not a one size fits all. Just because we make a video saying this injection route in theory or in a lab or scientifically is better than this one doesn't mean that it's a blanket policy for everybody or across the board. And the same thing goes for nutrition. I'm sure Ali will tell you later when those questions come up. There's no one diet fits all. Otherwise, you write a book and retire and call it a day, right? Individual approach is essential when you have to fine tune and pinpoint individual results. And no different from TRT and pretty much almost everything in life when it comes to human beings.
Why do you guys think that like so many guys put so much into their number total, like their bench press number? Like my testosterone's 900. It doesn't, like, no one really understands that it's really about how you feel. Because there are guys that are at like 500 that feel amazing.
Until you tell them they're at 500.
Yeah.
Until you tell them, hey, you're low. Oh, really? I didn't know that. I felt fine up until now. Thanks. You know, that's one of the reasons. We'll never reveal labs before we get subjective data from a patient. We'll call a patient, we'll get all the information from them first before we even go over numbers. Because you'll tell someone who feels great that, well, you only came back at 550, and they'll say, oh, wow, and I thought I felt well. Well, you did, and that shouldn't change based on a number. But look, people like to put a finger on tangible assets, and a number is a tangible asset. Describing how you feel is subjective. Looking at a number is objective, and people like objective data. And it's also what they're taught. They look at reference ranges. Just yesterday in the group, we had somebody ask me, why would you say this guy needs TRT if he's at the top end of the reference range? What is a reference range derived of? We've done a dozen videos on this. Okay, so people have this thing in their head where it's like, well, my doctor said I'm normal, therefore I don't need anything. It all comes down to numbers for people. And again, numbers don't define how you walk around and feel every single day.
Some men try to get their free T level as high as well as possible. Is there any point in trying to lower the shbg to do that?
Absolutely not. We've done a whole 40-minute video on shbg and why you, I think the title of the video, and you're the one that put it up there, is don't lower shbg, or why you shouldn't lower shbg. More free T does not mean better. It can actually have adverse effects. Things need to be balanced. Hormones, and I say this over and over again, hormones are like a symphony or an orchestra. Okay, you need the drummer, the guitarist, the vocalist, the bassist. You need them all in sync. You can have all of the best musicians in the world. You throw me on the piano in the back corner and I just ruined the entire orchestra. Okay. And again, this comes down to the same thing. It's like everything has to be in harmony. That harmony is going to be slightly different for everyone. So I like to look at hormone balancing sort of like an equalizer. It's not a one size fits all. It's not a master volume control. It's an equalizer. Once you fine tune everything to that individual's preference, now you run with it until things begin to change and it's time to fine tune again. So it's not like, well, let's crank up the bass all the way and it's good for everybody. Not the way it works. I wish it was that simple, but it isn't.
Someone asks, at what point are you considered optimal? Are there any certain cues to look for?
Do you feel as good as you had hoped for?
Yeah.
And are you realistic about that? Let's be real. Okay. If you're 65 years old and you tell me, well, I don't feel like I'm 18. I don't know if you ever will. Maybe, maybe not. Optimal means you're happy. You're happy. And again, you're happy based on things that we have control over. You're not happy because you're not making enough money at your job. And then you tell me it's your testosterone level. Obviously, we can't help you with that. But at the end of the day, optimal is, again, subjective. What is optimal to you? It is not a number, but how do you feel? Have we resolved your symptoms? We look at the Adams score, for example, 10 common low T symptoms. If you answered 4 out of 10 on that questionnaire, my goal is to tackle those 4 questions. I want 0 out of 10. That's my ultimate goal. Will we hit a 0 with every patient? No. I want to minimize those yeses into nos. And essentially that tells me I've resolved this, and that until you're either symptom-free or as close to it as possible. Optimization is an ever-going journey. It is not a destination, but it's a journey. And that's why I tell people, it's not like we're going to do this for you for 3 months, cut the noose, and you're on your own. This is a lifelong management process because it is a journey. There is no destination.
Maybe a question for Ali from Eric Davis. What are your thoughts on style of training for people who don't want to be a bodybuilder or powerlifter? Goals are just to recomp, feel better, and be able to go play with their kids without tiring out.
Without tiring out. I mean, the best way to train for somebody is the way that they enjoy. So, I used to always make fun of people who would do like Zumba or stuff like that. And if people enjoy it, like my mother-in-law does it, she enjoys it. Obviously, I would encourage somebody to weight train in addition to that. So if somebody wants to play with their kids and be optimal and recomp, that's going to have to involve some sort of weight training. But you can absolutely do that doing a total body workout 3 to 4 days a week where you hit everything. And then maybe you have 1 day of conditioning. And then that would be plenty. If for somebody who wants to do lifestyle training, I would say 3 to 4 days would be optimal for them to strength train for those type of goals. I see it all the time with people who are like, I don't really need a 6-pack. Maybe a 2-pack is cool. I don't want to necessarily have a stereotypical dad bod, but I actually want to be a cool dad and play with my kids, but maybe have some muscles. Yeah, absolutely. They can do that. Diet would be a big part of that too, but you can absolutely train in a way that is enjoyable and you don't have to do body part splits necessarily.
Gil, you agree?
I agree with her 100%. The first point she hit is the key, and I speak about this about nutrition all the time. Adherence is number one. I could tell you here is the scientific proven way for you to increase your goals on a physical level with exercise. And if you absolutely hate it, you maybe last a week or two. If you do something you love, you're probably going to do it for a very long period of time. And doing something is better than doing nothing. So adherence is number one. Therefore, find something you enjoy. I don't care if it's bowling, golf, as Ali would tell you. I mean, I used to make fun of golf. I'm like, that's not a sport. That's like playing chess. And until I went to the driving range and I couldn't move my entire left side of my body the next day. Do something physical. Your body's a machine. It's not designed to sit at a computer all day. Get up and go for a walk. Do anything. Literally just do anything. And play catch with your kids. You know, if you do something physical, when it comes to having more energy and endurance, it comes down to two energy systems, anaerobic and anaerobic. You want more muscular endurance. Okay. That's when you're, you know, doing something strenuous, and you want more aerobic endurance. That's the ability to go for a walk or a run or a bike ride or a swim. So exercising those two energy systems, like Ali said, a little bit of weights or any sort of resistance training, your body is a weight in and of itself. Calisthenics, moving your body around, push-ups, pull-ups, anything like that, a few times a week, combined with some low-intensity cardio training. And cardio doesn't mean balls to the wall, gasping for air, laying on my back, sweating. I can go for a 40-minute walk or go hiking in the woods, and my vascular system is going to improve. My oxygenation is going to improve, and it's going to make me less fatigued or tire less quickly when I am playing with my kids or running around kicking a ball. So just move your body and find ways to make it fun.
Please address HCG in conjunction with TRT in order to keep optimal genesis of neurosteroids such as DHEA and allopregnanolone.
That's Gil.
Unless someone can point to a study or correct me here, and again, I'm saying this off the top of my head, this isn't something I looked into too deeply. I don't believe that there's a direct proven correlation between an LH mimicker, which is what HCG is in men, and the upstream pro-hormones like DHEA and pregnenolone. Now, I could be wrong on this, but I don't believe there's a direct correlation. A lot of the pro-hormones come out of the adrenal glands. And I'm not sure what the effect of LH is specifically on the adrenals, the same way as it acts on Leydig cells in the testes for testosterone production. But we know that men on TRT use HCG for other purposes. That is prevent testicular atrophy, that is maintain LH for slight endogenous testosterone production, slight intratesticular aromatization into estrogen, which therefore helps prevent the total loss of fertility down the road if they wish to conceive, in which case they can add some FSH analogs like HMG. As far as supplementing DHEA and pregnenolone, I'm totally in favor of doing one or both if they are deficient and if they can benefit from some of those pro-hormones. I would not tell somebody, go ahead and take HCG to backfill your DHEA pathways. That is not what it's indicated for. It's not something we've ever used it for. And like I said, unless someone can show me conclusive evidence on why that should be done, I'm not sure where that concept actually comes from.
Related question. If a man produces no LH or FSH other than making no testosterone, what other hormones or byproducts are not produced?
FSH is a follicle stimulating hormone. In women, it's responsible for maturation of the egg, whereas LH is responsible for ovulation. In men, FSH is responsible for spermatogenesis in the Sertoli cells, which is why specifically fertility is impacted on TRT. LH, like I said, is responsible primarily for testosterone production in men. And when you're on TRT, you're essentially replacing these hormones exogenously anyway. Does it have other receptors in the body which require specific activation? I'm not sure. And I don't know if anybody is quite sure about that. Again, this is all inconclusive to my knowledge, unless there is data to prove otherwise. But again, this is why I think HCG for some, if they feel okay on it, is not necessarily a bad option to drizzle on the back end of TRT once you're dialed in and optimized.
Mm-hmm. Can you guys address adrenal fatigue, low cortisol, and the best way to combat that?
Ali, you want to go at it?
That it's more like you know, the adrenals don't actually get tired. It's more of a term that is kind of a blanket description of all the body's processes kind of like shutting down. So it's a way of describing HPTA axis dysfunction, and this can happen quite often in fitness competitors and people who are training a lot, especially when they're training CrossFit style or higher intensity, and they don't want to feed it, because we find a lot of people want to train like an athlete and they want to look like an athlete, but they don't want to eat like an athlete. And this is obviously very prominent in women, but I have this conversation with men all the time. I have not had one client come to me who's eating enough to fuel and support the type of activity that they're actually outputting. And that's when the body says, well, F you, I'm going to kind of downregulate everything that's not necessary, which is your erections, your testosterone, a lot of the sex hormones. And then it's going to constantly tell the adrenal glands, hey, we got to hang on for dear life here. I need you to chronically kind of output cortisol because we're in stress mode. Oh, and continue to release blood glucose. And this is going to happen all day long. And similar to insulin resistance, you know, your body's like, okay, I'm swimming in this stuff. And it gets tired in the sense of it doesn't want to see it anymore. I compare it to like if you work at Dunkin' Donuts, which it smells delicious when you walk in, but if you work there for a while, you don't smell it anymore. You don't see it anymore. So, you know, there's ways to combat that as far as understanding like the biometrics, like how are your hunger, energy, cravings, libido, how's your sleep? When all of those things start going through the floor, then you know something needs to change and something isn't right. And usually you can either toggle your metabolism where you can start exercising less, which means instead of 6 days a week, we go to 2 or 3, and you walk a ton. Just like Gil mentioned, walking is probably one of the best forms of activity we can do because it has no impact on hunger hormones. It has no impact on cortisol, whereas excessive cardio will elevate cortisol. And then walk a lot. And then you generally eat less when you're training less. The other toggle would be to train more and eat more, but most people can't handle that if they're already spiraling from not eating enough for the output that they're doing. So it's kind of going back and forth and spending time in each one of those, which can easily be done with people's lifestyles if they have to travel, if they have a busy work day and stuff like that. So I'm sure Gil will be able to expand more on the science behind that, but that's kind of how I can tell people how, all right, this is how we're going to mitigate what you're feeling. And this is how we can get you back to feeling better. And usually that involves eating enough to support their activity, but they might have to put on the brakes a little bit for a while.
I'm going to keep it short because this can get lengthy. So I'm just going to give people a word to Google if they want to research this on their own. I think a lot of people throw around the word adrenal fatigue when they actually feel what is called in layman terms burnout. They've had enough of life and they're at a point where they say, I'm just exhausted all the time. And I can't get out of bed. I'm just exhausted. I sleep well. I can't shake it. And this, they keep saying, well, it must be adrenal fatigue. This is a chronic state of cortisol and other stress hormones. It's a fight or flight. You're ringing the bell all day long because your stress response is now hitting you a million times a day from every angle. We are primitive animals. Okay. Our endocrine system is designed, millions of years ago, and not for today's world where, there are bills, there are kids, there are this, there are that to deal with all the time, constant stress, social media, social stresses, etc. So Google the word allostatic loads, and you're going to understand what this does to your body and how it brings on chronic disease and fatigue. And once you start to manage your stress levels a little bit better, you're going to start blaming or stop blaming your body's organs because they're only doing what you're asking them to do. So start to manage your mind a little better, and your adrenals are going to reward you in return.
Yeah, you could essentially say like low T is testicle fatigue in a sense, but we don't use that word.
Well, the CPT code is E29.1, which stands for testicular hypofunction, which is a fancy word for saying your balls stopped working.
My balls are tired.
Yeah, testicular hypofunction is testicular fatigue. But the end of the day, there's a reason for it. So allostatic loads, Google that and you'll understand what it is you need to change in your life to not feel burnt out.
Okay. Rachid said, my total testosterone went from 142 nanograms per deciliter to 800 in just 3 days. Only difference is I tested the first time 3 p.m. and the last time in the morning. How can this change so fast?
Even if you tested both in the morning, it could change. You had a stressful night of drinking and partying and not sleeping well and fighting with your wife, and you woke up and went and got your T tested, it could be totally low. I mean, I had $50 in my wallet yesterday and I got $700 in there today. I mean, how did that change so fast? Remember, this is a fill and deplete system, constant circadian cycle every day. Fill and deplete, fill and deplete. You take a picture in a given moment, why do women take like 15 selfies and only post one? Because the other 14 suck, right?
True.
That's what happened with his labs there. That's it.
Nailed it.
It's not that they suck. It's just that, that filter was a
No,
little
they
low.
suck. They suck. The angle has to be a little,
Of course.
gotta be right.
You got to take it from the top so the chin doesn't show, right?
Mm-hmm.
The pointy. Yeah. I learned.
Are keeping total T levels between 2,500 and 3,000 nanograms per deciliter dangerous, despite of no negative side effects?
That's my answer.
Okay, no one.
I mean, we've done one on this, actually. We've done a whole video on this. Is it dangerous? The good news is you probably have anywhere between 300 and 700 months left to live on that dose. Is it going to kill you tomorrow? Probably not. I mean, I've never seen anyone overdose on testosterone. Is it going to lead to adverse effects over time? Your genetic predisposition will decide that for you, combined with your lifestyle and many other factors. I mean, if I eat a bowl of cereal every morning, will I develop diabetes? I mean, how can we answer this question definitively? Is it a physiological dose for a man? Probably not. Has any man ever achieved it naturally? I don't know the answer to that. Probably not. Maybe. Is it going to harm this particular individual? I know guys whose T hits 800 and they have all the side effects. I know guys who've run steroid cycles for 10 years, never even had a pimple. I mean, it really comes down to the individual. If you're looking for a pat on the back for running a mild steroid cycle and you want us to sit here and be like, don't worry, dude, it's fine. We can't do that. Are we going to chastise you for it? No. You do what you want. There's no free lunch. If you pay the price, you pay the price. If you want to take a risk, you take the risk. And all we could do is wish you come out on the other side, full health and whatnot. But no one can sit here and make you guarantees or promises. It's probably not as bad as Google will tell you, to be honest. But just keep an eye on your labs and make sure that you're doing everything else in conjunction. Don't go out drinking every night and eating cheesecakes and donuts. Lead a good lifestyle if you're going to run it there. Give your body a break. I mean, don't live at 3,000 total T for 10 years. Just be responsible about it. It's not medicine. Okay. This is not how, I mean, we're not going to have a patient at that level, but you do what you want and hope for the best.
Any thoughts or advice on training or lifting weights when on blood thinners like warfarin? Ali?
That's Gil.
Coumadin can have a risk for bleeding, just like any anticoagulant. Just be careful for bruising. Just be cautious. If you're on warfarin, chances are you probably have something going on there. I don't know if you got AFib or any heart conditions, or if you had any occlusions or any medical conditions. They don't just put guys on warfarin for no reason. So just check always with your healthcare provider based on what they recommend to avoid or do based on the prescription they gave you. But at the end of the day, if you're on a blood thinner, you probably should avoid taking vitamin K, which is the antidote. So that's going to counter effect. Okay. And we always tell people take vitamin D3. I know Jordan always says take K2 with it. And I know in one of the videos we did on supplements, I said, well, take that with an asterisk, because if you're on warfarin or any heparin, any of these anticoagulants, be careful with K2. But just be careful with over-the-counter supplements that are, aiding in coagulation, because there's a reason they put you on an anticoagulant. But I wouldn't say you can't train. Ensure that your blood pressure is okay. We really need to know why this guy's on warfarin in order to give him more helpful advice. But again, we're not directing medical advice here at any individual. These are blanket statements. So the best thing is just ask a doctor who put you on the warfarin if you can train. But I don't see why you cannot exercise unless you have extreme conditions. And Steve, you're a physician. Maybe you can touch on that.
I guess you just bleed more easily when you scratch yourself or whatever bruise you have.
Yeah. Bruising is the first sign. So just monitor for bruising under the skin as much as you can when you're on a blood thinner.
Yeah.
Ecchymosis is the medical term for it.
Yeah, ecchymosis, right. If you can still progress in lifts while you are in a caloric deficit, is it safe to do so, or will it induce injuries?
Will it induce injuries? Is it safe to progress? Yeah, it's safe to progress. I have guys who are in a deficit, who that's how I recomp them. I jack their protein up so that we make sure we preserve as much muscle mass as possible, and they still get stronger because they're actually eating enough and spend a long enough time eating enough to where their calorie deficit doesn't feel like what most people would think is a calorie deficit. So absolutely. And I think the risk to injury, number one risk to injury would be any previous injury, which can definitely set your movement profile off. So if you have any asymmetries, or if you've injured an area before, then you're likely to injure either that area or the opposite area again. So everyone, like medicine, like anything, it's very individual. I don't think that you're putting yourself at an increased risk unless you're really not eating enough to support the lifts that you're doing. But we covered this before, where if you're feeling like crap, you really shouldn't be in the gym adding another stressor onto your life that can put you at risk of injury.
Okay. Which is better, sustanon or cypionate? I have some uncomfort with my protest. Should I lower the dose of sustanon?
Jordan and I did a video on this. We're not a big fan of sustanon because it's a blend of 4 different esters. Makes it a lot harder to control in terms of your steady state and timing. Cypionate is a single ester. I much prefer single esters. If I give you a blended Scotch whiskey and you say, I like something about it and I don't like something else, it's a lot harder to pinpoint than if I gave you a single malt and you said, I like this one or I hate that one. It's like when you have food allergies, what they do is they first tell you, let's eliminate all foods and let's bring in one group at a time. And after the end of the week, if you have no adverse reaction, we're going to add another group, because that allows you to pinpoint what works for you and what does not. When you're throwing sustanon in, you're throwing everything in at the same time, and it makes it very difficult to dial things in. It's no different why we tell guys dial in on cypionate prior to adding HCG so that we can put a finger on what works and what doesn't, instead of trying to back things out of the formula and playing a guessing game.
Yeah. How to prevent massive body hair growth while on TRT?
Razor blades. How to prevent getting wet when it's raining? Use an umbrella. All right. You can't prevent things from happening. You can manage them better.
Yeah. Hi all. Glucose is constantly 6.3 to 7 moles per liter AM reading. I have low shbg 16, but would not be overweight. 90 kilograms, have tried low carb, high carb, fasting before bed, and is suggesting lowering the glucose.
That was a mishmash question. I'm not quite sure I understand it.
Me neither.
All I got there was he wants to know how to lower his glucose.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm not a fan of fad diets, but if you have a blood glucose issue and you're insulin resistant, try going keto for about 4 to 6 weeks. Remeasure your A1C. It's a 90-day marker. Give it a good 6, maybe 8 weeks. When I say keto, that doesn't mean bacon grease all day. It means legitimate, healthy fats, nuts, avocados, coconut oil, stuff like that. Get lean meats. Get your fats from animal products in that form, and peanut butters, whatever, but natural peanut butters. Quality fats for energy and protein, and then good fiber, and I'll just avoid all those high glycemic carbs for about a month or 2, and then recheck, and your insulin sensitivity should improve. You could throw berberine hydrochloride, 500 milligrams, 2 to 3 times a day into your meals. And that should help. I mean, really all I got out of that question was, how do I lower my blood glucose? So it sounds like he needs a proper lifestyle change nutritionally.
Yeah,
Ali
but
could
when
probably
people
touch
said
on
they've
that.
tried every diet, it usually means they've tried it for like a few days. So, like Gil said, that would be the appropriate use of a ketogenic diet, not necessarily for weight loss, but to change the insulin resistance. And then if he wants to get fancy, get a continuous blood glucose monitor if he can afford it. That's always a fun time. Otherwise, finger prick, post prandial, and then, before and after training if you want. You can poke all day. You can do as much data as you want, really, but you got to try something long enough for it to have an effect.
What do you consider jacking your protein up?
So I err on the side of higher protein pretty much for all my clients for a few reasons. Number one, nobody eats enough protein. I think I've had maybe 1 or 2 people, including fitness professionals, come to me eating enough protein, which in my mind would be at least a gram per pound of body weight. Now, there are arguments as to whether that's lean body mass or body weight. The majority of my clientele are not obese clients. If somebody is obese, then I would probably go more lean body mass. So if we're talking someone who's generally spending time in the gym and maybe a little bit overweight, a gram per pound or body weight or even more. So I'm a female, I'm 5'3", I'm 59 kilos, and I eat 200 grams of protein. I didn't start there though. I worked my way up. So the other reason that I have people do that, it increases satiety. So you're less likely to be hungry. And it also serves as a calorie funnel. So protein is really the least likely of the 3 macronutrients to be stored as body fat. So if you're eating a higher amount, not only do you also feel full, but your body actually burns calories. It's called the thermic effect of feeding, digesting protein, because the metabolic pathway required to send it to body fat is so expensive for the body that is very likely not to happen. And they've done studies where they've had people in calorie excess surpluses of 800 or so calories through just protein, and they didn't gain any weight. So that's why I jack it up. And I have most of my females, I would say, between 130 to 200 grams of protein. And it works very well, especially when you're in a calorie deficit. Now, if somebody is in a surplus or they're trying to gain weight, then I'll lower the protein a little bit and push those calories more towards carbohydrates, as carbs are protein sparing. But if you're dieting, if you're lean, you can definitely go high protein. The leaner you get, the higher the protein you need. The older you get, the higher the protein that you need. I have to say, unless you have a kidney disease or a kidney issue, it's not going to cause any problems. And it doesn't make you bulky or cause cancer or all these other things that have been thrown out in the past few years.
In the other video we did together, Ali, you told the viewers that you could put someone in a caloric surplus in protein, and that it would not make him more fat or whatever. And someone put in the comments, did Ali find a way to break the laws of thermodynamics?
You got to say that, take that with a grain of salt. So they have done studies where that has happened. However, does that mean that'll happen with everybody? No. So if you are eating, 900 grams of carbs and eating a crap ton of fat, and then you go add a ton of protein on top of that, that's a hell of a calorie surplus. So you're not in a metabolic ward being studied, being fed a certain amount of protein. So I don't think I've broken the laws of thermodynamics, nor am I trying to. The point I'm trying to get across, and I'm hoping this was a fitness professional because they're always the one who wants semantics, is the basic guideline of diets is that you can have a high amount of protein and it's not going to be an issue. And it usually helps with compliancy because people feel full. It's very difficult to eat a lot of protein and vegetables all day, but I could eat 5 donuts, no problem.
What would be
this comes down to I'm sorry. I was going to say this comes down to nutritional density versus volume density. Protein is not nutritionally dense per se because you can have 8 ounces of chicken and it's going to be maybe 400 calories. in food, but it's about 90 to 100 grams of protein, and you're going to feel pretty full. You can have one Oreo, which is essentially the same amount of calories. It's nutritionally dense, but very low volume, and it's not going to make you feel satiated, and you're just going to keep overeating it. So like Ali said, if you're eating protein and fiber, you're going to have a hard time being in a caloric surplus to begin with. Ask any bodybuilder on a bulk, and they'll tell you that they do 2 big shakes a day, and then they throw peanut butter in there, and then they're eating cheeseburgers on top because they cannot eat chicken, rice, and potatoes and hit 4, 5, 6,000 calories. It's not humanly possible unless you're just some freak. So yeah, at the end of the day, you're gonna have an easier time keeping your protein high. The only thing I would do is, I check with guys. I check their BUN, I check their creatinine, I check their EGFR, their metabolic panel, make sure their kidneys are healthy, and I always tell them to consume a ton of water, just not to overload the kidneys. But other than that, like she said, I find most people are grossly under eating protein, and it keeps you in an anabolic state. Not to mention the guys that come in and are already on a steroid of sorts, which increases protein synthesis significantly. They're going to be able to get away with a lot more protein without necessarily gaining fat, because it is not an efficient source of energy. So when it comes to energy balance and being in a caloric surplus per se, you have to consider fats and carbs first and foremost. And yeah, like she said, you're going to eat, 1,000 grams of carbs and then blame the protein overload on your body fat. That's not how it works. If you're eating a moderate carb, moderate fat diet and then throwing in a ton of protein, you're not going to gain fat, especially if you're training, not to mention if you're in an anabolic state on exogenous hormones. It's all going to go where it needs to go.
Yeah, I encourage whoever made that comment to try it, because it is very difficult, especially through real food. And that's where I think somebody asked on protein shakes. I can't recall, but it was in the group where, protein shakes get such a bad rap back from like the Slim Fast days where it was, Slim Fast all day long. And those are actually like a disgusting amount of sugar and all that stuff. But, people need to supplement shakes usually to get their protein levels up, and you can make them very nutrient dense. But it is difficult to eat real food. You can wake up early, go to bed late, and try to eat all your calories in protein and vegetables. And if you're in a surplus in protein and vegetables, you're probably not going to gain fat.
When I was bulking, I could not get my 4,500, 5,000 calories in real food. I just didn't have enough time in the day to finish it. I would make 1,000 calorie shake, 50 grams of whey, 80 grams of maltodextrin, a banana, a couple spoons of almond butter, 16 ounces of milk. I would have to liquefy my meals in order to get my calories in.
Yeah. Yeah.
On calories, what would be a good starting point on calories for a 41-year-old male who works in an office? Goal would be recomp.
Don't know enough about him. I always make that.
What's
it's
better,
so
blue
difficult.
car or red car?
Depends on the body weight, then, I guess.
I can do a
41-year-old
consultation.
man
We can
works in
solve
an
that.
office. How many calories do we need? Man, there's a reason these assessments take 30 to 40 minutes. That's why Ali and I always do these consults with people one-on-one, because he's asking for an individual approach with very limited data. There's just no way. There's no way.
Yeah, that's the point of the question. So contact one of these guys. I will put a link to their business in the description of the video.
I like that.
So someone asked on AIs, I came off the AI, which is good, January 8th, and test SIP dosage is 100 milligrams a week split into daily shots. I have been having sensitive nipples for about 2 weeks now. Will this go away anytime soon? I'm getting worried.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Even I do that. Yeah.
That's reassuring. Okay.
Hormonal changes cause slight sensitivity in the nipples. It's not gyno. Don't worry. You'll be fine.
Does SHBG raise with age?
With age?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Can you just repeat the question?
Does the SHBG levels raise with age?
Yes. Certainly does. It's one of the leading causes on why some older men come back with low free T and relatively normalized total T, because their SHBG levels have gone up significantly. We find guys in their 50s and 60s with SHBGs of 80 to 100 quite often. And that is one of the reasons why they start to feel symptomatic, even when their total T is 450, 500 and up. They're symptomatic because the free T levels are all bound as a result of SHBG elevation. So not only does liver disease and fatty liver and alcohol and things of that sort raise SHBG, so does aging of the liver.
Someone recently switched to a new brand of testosterone enanthate that is at a 400 milligrams per milliliter concentration, and he's getting an incredible amount of injection site pain. Would that be related to the high concentration at 400 instead of the 200?
Yes. Combined with the fact that he's using an underground product, and underground brewers who are non-pharmaceutical tend to use a lot more benzyl alcohol and benzyl benzoate. And the reason they do that is because they want to minimize the risk of infection, because these guys run on these Reddit forums and these underground forums, and they develop a reputation by selling steroids to guys online. And if someone gets an infection or a septic abscess from one of their injections, their lab gets named and they lose their reputation. So they would rather hurt you a little bit, but prevent an infection so that they don't lose their reputation. That's number one. So you're going to get a lot of post-injection pain, combined with the fact that you're taking a crystallized hormone and you're putting a higher concentration. If I put 4 tablespoons of coffee into an 8-ounce glass instead of 1 tablespoon coffee, it's going to be a much stronger flavor of coffee, and it's going to have a much stronger aftertaste. So testosterone should be up to 200 milligrams in a pharmaceutical world. In some countries, they go up to 250. 400 is a very unstable. It can crystallize, and it's going to hurt. I don't recommend he use this product. And he should probably go back to pharmaceutical grade anyway, because we're not going to endorse underground testosterone. You don't even know what's in it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good advice. Umer Malik here, he's a bit jealous of your nice hair, Gil, and he asks about premature graying of hair. Could that be hormone imbalance or stress?
I've got a lot of grays in the last year, I got to tell you. It's certainly stress related, absolutely. There's a lot of pressure coming on here every week and having to answer questions, and it keeps me up at night. What I want to know is, my hairstyle and Allie's are pretty similar, so I want to know who wore it better. So if people can comment on that, that would be very helpful, because she's getting a lot of flack for it.
Me, but whatever, fine.
Graying can, premature graying, it's definitely stress related. I wouldn't necessarily blame it on TRT. I would blame the amount of hair on my face from TRT. I shaved this morning, and you know, this is what happens after 4 hours. But yeah, graying, graying is stress related and age related, of course. Hey, I'm not picky about the color anymore, as long as it's still there.
I got a question via Messenger yesterday. It was, could you talk about the maximum dose for melatonin for optimization? Do you have any experience with that?
The melatonin that I've used in the past is sublingual. I've done 3 to 5 drops under the tongue before bedtime. I think that there's a risk in using exogenous melatonin long term. I think it kind of maybe suppresses the pineal gland a little bit and kind of alters your own production. You become somewhat dependent, and then you build a tolerance and it stops being as effective. I like to let the body make its own melatonin. A couple of things you could do before sleep is avoid electronics for a solid hour or two, before bed. I know we all fall asleep with our laptops, televisions, and iPhones. Notice I say iPhones because Samsungs are not real phones. So flame away all you want. But people always fall asleep with their screen, right? And at the end of the day, that light is telling your brain, we're nocturnal creatures. When the sun is up, we're up and alert. And then when the sun goes down, we start to get tired because our brain tells our pineal gland to go ahead and release melatonin. It's time to go to sleep. And when we have constant UV light in our face before bed, our melatonin levels are suppressed. So trying to relax a little bit at night, try not to be on your phone. It's also a stress factor when you're reading news and politics and ongoing events on your phone and on social media all night long. And then you have to turn that switch off instantly rather than letting it kind of taper down. That combined with the UV light is going to suppress your own melatonin. So make it a point to spend a solid hour before you're ready to go to bed with no electronics and trying to relax and listen to music or do whatever it is you want to do to kind of settle down for the night. And then make sure that your hormones are in place. Pregnenolone I think does a nice job. And then me personally, CJC 1295 and ipamorelin, 200 micrograms, fasted before bed, knocks me out for a solid 8 or 9 hours. And that's something that we offer all our patients at the clinic who are on TRT to supplement with that. It's a growth hormone secretagogue, and it gives you ridiculous amount of sleep and rest. So I like that better than melatonin. Melatonin, I think people tend to build a dependence on, and I'm not a big fan of supplementing with it unless absolutely needed.
Mm-hmm.
Ali, you have anything to add on sleep?
Go a long way. What's that?
What, blue light glasses? Yeah.
Yeah, they're like a very affordable way, and they do work. Like some people question them, but I remember the first time I used them and then traveled, and I was in a hotel and I felt like I was blinded by the TV because I forgot my glasses, and I was like, okay. And my Oura Ring data changed to start to use them when you're watching TV, at night. But, to keep the TV out of the bedroom, maybe read a book like we used to when we were younger, and make it a book that has nothing to do with what you do for a living. And I'm saying that because I'm calling myself out too, because obviously reading about training is fun, but it starts that stress cycle, like Gil was saying. And definitely social media, like, if somebody's wrong on the internet, that's going to send stress hormones and you're going to stay awake for a while and your sleep's going to be all messed up. Have an orgasm, pass out.
But is it possible for someone who is pre-diabetic to eat 200 plus carbs without having adverse issues? I have tried low carb, but it seems that my lifting suffers and I feel like crap in the gym.
Diabetic, he should define if he's type 1 or type 2 for starters. Is he on metformin or insulin? Is it controlled, compensated, uncompensated? You need a little more information, but I mean, Ali could touch on the blanket on that, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to say. Like, is it type 1, type 2? People who tend to be erring towards pre-type 2, you can pretty much fix pretty quickly, either like we were saying before, going ketogenic, experimenting with some fasting if that works, and aerobic exercise, not necessarily high intensity cardio, but aerobic, because aerobic exercise will increase the amount of mitochondria that we have. Powerhouse of the cell, remember biology class. And that is where energy is made. And that will allow your body to use carbohydrates and fats more as energy. So while you develop that aerobic fitness, you can definitely go lower carb. And remember, lower carb for how long? Go long enough for it to make an impact.
Yeah, maybe the guy who asked will add some info later.
Yeah.
Someone said, a doctor told me to try maca, I don't know what it is, instead of TRT. Is it a superfood or is it bullshit? I guess
Maca root, okay.
TRT,
The question is, do you need TRT or not?
Yeah, like it's supposed to be like an aromatase
Instead of TRT.
powder.
Do you need TRT or not? That is the question.
That's
what
a
is
first.
maca? What is
That's
maca,
a first.
guys?
If you need TRT, get TRT.
What is maca? Do you know?
It's like a root powder that
Maca root is a supplement. It's an herbal supplement.
Okay.
If you need TRT, get TRT. If you don't need TRT, don't get TRT. There's no substitute to testosterone with, Amazon products.
Oh, wait.
Are healing peptides like BPC 157 superior to HGH in healing injuries?
Not the same. Not the same. BPC, and again, the word injury is very vague. You need to be more specific. All right. When Ali texts me that my hair looks like shit, I feel injured, but BPC ain't going to help with that. Injuries are a very generic term. I mean, are you talking about soft tissue? Are you talking about bones? Are you talking about, soreness from training? Soft tissue repair, like tendonitis. Put it this way, inflammatory injuries, like tendonitis, are generally healed better by BPC from my own experience, having used both compounds extensively for years. Overall sustainability of joints and recovery by growth hormone analogs are are really, really good. I mean, when we use CJC and ipamorelin with patients, and I use it myself, I find that my recovery and my rest are sufficient. When I have an acute injury, I had decline tendonitis in the wrists, I've had a partially torn rotator cuff, I've had severe tendonitis in both elbows and forearms from lifting, and BPC does wonders for that. So I would say BPC more for an acute soft tissue injury, and a growth hormone secretagogue or analog for a sort of a prophylactic maintenance long-term type of approach.
My pharmacy refuses to give me a 10 milliliter bottle. Instead, they gave me a 1 milliliter. The pharmacist stated that poking the bottle would reduce the cypionate's potency. Any truth to that?
The pharmacist needs to stop speaking and just fill a prescription. At the end of the day, the reason that happens is because you went to a big pharma company. You went to a Walgreens / Duane Reade / CVS. Stop using depot testosterone and start using a compounding pharmacy from a proper clinic that works with a compounding pharmacy, and you're going to get your larger vials, and you're not going to have all that waste product trying to squeeze out the last 1/10 of an ml out of a 1 ml vial every other week. So that's really the bottom line of why it's done that way. It has nothing to do with it other than the fact that you're going through the wrong pharmacies. We still ship 5 and 10 mLs.
Here in Europe, we can, in most countries, only get glass ampules of 1 ml.
Yeah, and the ampules are the worst because the risk of you got to use a filtered needle, to draw them in case there's any glass particles. And then in another video here with you a while back, I mentioned getting sterile 10 ml vials and transferring your ampules into a vial. This we have multiple use. I mean, ampule all the time and then throwing away.
A question I got maybe for you both would be interesting to hear your opinion. Are eggs healthy or not?
Eggs?
What?
Eggs?
Eggs?
Yes.
Extremely healthy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm assuming they're getting at the cholesterol thing. And
yeah, people are always getting at the cholesterol, and some bodybuilders are eating 12 a day. And
I'm good for 6 to 8 eggs
you
a
can
day.
only eat 1 a week.
Yeah, eggs are good for your natural DHEA levels. They're good for brain function. They're good for your eyes. They're good for protein. They're good for healthy fats. Eggs are good for you, and they're delicious. Dietary cholesterol does not translate into serum cholesterol.
Say it again. Say it again in case it doesn't.
Dietary cholesterol does not translate into serum cholesterol. I can't tell you how many doctors tell people, "Oh, your cholesterol's high. Avoid cheese, eggs, meats."
Yeah.
God.
Still, this is 20 years
It's
old.
2021. It's 2021, not 1921. Okay? It's insane. It's absolutely insane. We're using 1960s studies in these medical schools. What's going on? Doctors should not talk about, no offense, Stephen, you're the exception. You and Jordan Grant are the exception. Doctors should not talk about nutrition. Okay? Because 85% of them more obese and the other 15 are slightly overweight. So they should just stop talking about nutrition by all means. Oh, it drives me up the wall. Anytime a question starts with "my doctor said," I'm just going to sit that one out.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, the guy Pedro that was talking about his pre-diabetic state, he added some extra information for you. He's pre-diabetic type 2, fasting A1C is 5.7, and blood glucose is 97 nanograms per deciliter. So he asked if he could eat 200 plus carbs.
Depends on his goals, depends on his age and overall body condition at the moment. Yeah, he can, as long as he's doing it proper. I mean, if he's doing it on Oreos and donuts, probably not a good idea. If he's doing it with rice and potatoes, and he's using some berberine and he's weight training and his goal is to bulk up right now, yeah, absolutely. If he's more concerned with his health than his physique, wouldn't be a bad idea to take him on keto and lower that A1C down to 5.0 or 4.9. and then give yourself a little bit of leeway. It's always going to come up when you're bulking on heavy carbs. Not that 200 is necessarily heavy, but again, it depends what those carbs are made of. If they're low glycemic, if they're incorporated with protein and fiber to slow digestion, and he's well hydrated and he's active, then he's going to be fine. Activity is key. If you're in that stage, make sure you're eating 60 to 70% of your daily carb intake in intra and post workout when your body is going to utilize that blood glucose. Don't have a bowl of Cheerios and then go to bed. So make sure that blood sugar is not lingering in the blood. Make sure it's being used for energy when you're using those 200 grams. Make sure 120 to 140 of those grams are in that 2-hour window during and post workout. And then you'll be fine. But again, it comes down to your priorities right now. Are you going to prioritize your physique or your health? If you're going to prioritize your health, reverse that A1C back off a little bit. If you're going to prioritize your physique, listen, you still have a long ways to go. Going from 5.7 to 6.3 is going to take a little bit of negative effort. So I wouldn't worry too much. I've been at the 5. I've been pre-diabetic before on bulk phases, and I reversed it in a month. So that's why I say it's hard to see without seeing the individual.
Yeah.
What do you think, Ali?
No, I agree. I was going to say, if he places everything around his training, gets himself to a point where he can lower his A1C, maybe, tries fasting again. Trouble with fasting is people don't get the amount of calories they need within their window, but get his carbs around training. I'm not sure why he's fixed on 200 grams. I mean, you could always start lower, placing them around training. Sometimes it's hard to get in that amount of carbs around training, pre, intra, and post, unless you're doing like dextrin and stuff. But I mean, some white rice.
I'll do
at
maltodextrin.
Like what's that?
I'll do maltodextrin. Hey, I throw 3 ounces of brown sugar into my intra workout drink.
Yeah, like
that's about 85 grams of sugar right there.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. If he really has to, 200 grams is his goal, but again, it's arbitrary without knowing more about an individual. So sign up for a consult.
Are there any limits to how much protein can be absorbed per meal or per day?
I think that's a myth.
We need Mike Israetel back on for this.
Yeah, he has answered that recently.
Yeah, he just published something, and I didn't mean to kind of jump at it. My whole thing on that was I didn't like the fact that he said, what did he say? He said 25% of your daily protein intake per meal or something along those lines. I forget exactly what it was. My whole thing on that was what Ali said earlier, was that it is not an efficient way. He said that any excess protein will be converted into glucose and then stored as fat. And my whole thing was that it is not an efficient process for the body. And I believe that peristalsis will direct and slow down the digestion of protein for further use when needed. So protein distribution is important. So I like protein in every meal. So it's always there and ready for the body to use when needed. But at the same time, I think that if you have protein backed up from earlier, rather than it being converted into glucose, I think it's kind of going to sit there and wait. Your body is efficient at increasing or decreasing the rate of digestion using peristalsis, which is simply moving the food through the chain, and an as needed basis, specifically with protein and fiber. Carbs and fats are a little bit different. They could always be stored for later. Storing protein, I think, is something that is only going to be done in a scenario where you're literally just starving your body of energy and you really need that, the gluconeogenesis to elevate your blood sugar and prevent your brain from shutting down. So can you eat too much protein? Sure. You can cause kidney failure if you eat too much protein. What that number is, no one knows for sure, and it's going to vary by individual, but it's a lot. It's a lot. Unless you're stuffing protein shakes all day long, you're not going to overeat protein by eating meat and chicken. You're going to feel way too full long before you get to that point.
That worrying about that is such a low-hanging fruit in my mind. Like, can you get the calories you need in? Can you get enough protein in? That's like worrying about the sodium in coconut aminos when, you've got high blood pressure. Like that's not something we need to be worrying about. There's a lot bigger rocks to hit.
Cool Stuff asked, I have to stop taking TRT for various reasons. Will I be fine without a PCT? Thanks. I know we did a video on the HAPT restart. Gil?
How long has he been on TRT? What doses has he been on? How old is he? The simple answer is no. You need to restart. We're not going to get into why he's stopping. Obviously, he's got personal reasons he doesn't want to disclose, and that's fine. I wouldn't stop. If you had to stop, restart your system. I mean, will it come back on its own? Probably. It's going to take a long time. 3 to 6 months if you're lucky. Again, depending on age, overall health, your levels prior to TRT, how long you've been on TRT, all of these factors. I mean, we don't have enough data to answer this precisely, so I'm just throwing all the options out there. My recommendation is get a proper PCT protocol going, and within 2 months, you should be okay, hopefully, if your body is recoverable.
Maybe one of the last questions, because we are at 1 hour. What are your thoughts on MK677 as a viable oral GH secretagogue option for enhancing sleep? And if so, how little should be taken for this purpose?
I see one indication for MK677. That is the name on the SARM sites, even though it's not a SARM. It's a ghrelin agonist. The medical name for it is ibutamorin, when available through pharmacies, and we do prescribe it on an as-needed basis. And I find it is only indicated for people who are severely underweight and need to gain weight because they have no appetite. It is a very good appetite increaser. That is what it does. It will increase water weight and it will increase your appetite significantly. It is up to you to make sure that you're eating the correct things, because it's going to want to make you raid the fridge at 2 in the morning. However, it does have a very negative impact on blood glucose and insulin sensitivity. It will lead to pre-diabetic and type 2 diabetes stages in a matter of a couple of months. So I'm not a big fan of it. And if you need a secretagogue for sleep, CJC 1295 and ipamorelin, as I mentioned earlier, are very viable options. And I do not think that they are going to compare to ibutamorin / MK677 when it comes to that specific benefit. If you're a male and you weigh 150 pounds and you tell me I cannot get to 170 because I just can't eat enough food, that is a fair indication to try a course of 12.5 to 25 milligrams of ibutamorin in the morning and see if we can increase your appetite. And it normally does. I've seen guys put on 10, 12, 15 pounds in 4 to 6 weeks using this medication. Never would I use it for sleep.
Mm-hmm. The cool stuff guy that asked about stopping TRT and the PCT, he has added some info. He says he has been 7 months, 100 milligrams per week on TRT. Thanks.
7 months, 100 milligrams. I don't know his age. I don't know what his levels were prior. I don't know if he's primary or secondary hypogonadal. As I said before, PCT if you can. If you can't, then what I say doesn't matter. You're just not going to do it anyway. Hope for the best. What I'm telling you is if you have an option at PCT, do it. Kickstart your system. All right? Kickstart it. Don't just wait. It's just going to be a longer, more miserable road. So if you have an opportunity to get it done correctly, do it correctly.
He's 40. He had it now.
40.
Okay. How important is sleep on TRT? I am a night owl.
On and off TRT, sleep is the single most important thing in your life. Go ahead, Ali.
That's what I was going to say. Like, it doesn't matter if you're on TRT or, if you take friggin' a multivitamin. I mean, sleep's important no matter what. It's not going to work better if you sleep more, but it's also not going to necessarily work better if you sleep less. Just like anything, like you have to sleep in order to have good insulin sensitivity and, I don't know, produce all the other hormones that your body wants you to produce. You got to recover as hard as you can.
Presumably, we spend 33% of our life in a sleeping state. Okay, 8 hours sleep, 16 hours awake. Your body is designed to hibernate / sleep for 33% of your lifespan. Think about that. Nature, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, whatever put us here, designed us to spend 33% of our life, whether we like it or not, in a particular state. And you're asking how important that is. What if I cut your income by 33%? How much would that impact you?
I like that one. I'm going to use that.
What advice can you give on narrowing the root cause of high blood pressure, or are some of us just destined to be on meds?
High blood pressure comes in so many forms. We got calcium channel blockers, beta blockers. I mean, we got so many different types of blood pressure medications that without knowing why you have blood pressure, what the underlying condition, what type of blood pressure or mechanism of action of blood pressure your body is it hypervolemia? Is it a kidney issue? Is it a heart condition? Why do you have high blood pressure? That is the question. So without knowing that, it's very hard to answer. This may sound cliche, but improving your lifestyle and overall health, reducing the amount of visceral fat in your body, reducing the amount of stress in your life, improving nitric oxide and vasodilation effects on your endothelium, improving your nutrition, improving the amount and quality of your sleep are all going to be positive factors on blood pressure. Unless you have some sort of an electrolyte imbalance, fluid imbalance, heart condition, or anything of the sort, for the most part, a lot of blood pressure is brought on by lifestyle. And yes, it can be reversed. Are you destined to a lifelong, blood pressure medication therapy? Hopefully not. But again, all of the questions I asked have to be answered before we can address that properly. So I've seen a lot of people come off blood pressure medication. Most of the blood pressure medicated patients that I have seen in our clinics are a result of poor lifestyle. Oftentimes TRT helps to resolve a lot of these issues. And oftentimes TRT just gives them the motivation to make the lifestyle changes, which then directly affect the blood pressure underlying issue. So again, without knowing more, it's a little hard to answer for this specific gentleman. But as a rule of thumb, it never hurts to improve your lifestyle and nutrition and sleep, reduce stress, and lose some body fat. But the short answer is no, you're not destined to lifelong blood pressure medication per se.
Yeah. I've gotten a lot of clients off of that with their doctor, but you can get a Bluetooth blood pressure cuff off Amazon, and it's super easy. You just press a button, it goes to your phone. Aerobic exercise is what brought it down. So I know we went like hashtag F cardio as an industry and it's high intensity everything, but you haven't earned the right to do that until you've put in the time doing enough aerobic exercise that can absolutely right away bring down blood pressure and resting heart rate.
If you think of your heart as a pump, which is essentially is what it is, right? Your systolic pressure is the chambers squeezing to get systemic circulation going. And that is something that is under significant loads when you're stressed or when you're performing resistance exercise or high intensity exercise in order to oxygenate the tissues in your body. When you're doing low state intensity or low intensity, steady state cardiovascular exercise, your heart is essentially relaxing. It's allowing it to stretch. I tell people list cardio is essentially the yoga for your heart. Okay, so if you're weightlifting all the time and you're contracting and shortening the muscles, the yoga does the opposite. It allows them to be more pliable, more flexible, and more mobile. And if your heart is constantly contracting hard in order to pump the blood, it is going to thicken, it is going to harden, and it is going to be less efficient as a pump. And that steady state cardio is going to allow it to relax. So it's going to undo the negative effects of strenuous activity. And that's why it's very important to do walks and short bike rides. And again, I tell people, you're crossing over from the aerobic or oxidative energy system into the anaerobic energy system when you can not only feel pressure in your chest, but you can no longer carry on a comfortable conversation. So if I'm talking to you on the phone while you're doing your walk and you're starting to gasp for air where you're having a hard time finishing your sentences, you're probably moving too fast. All right. Make sure that you can carry on a comfortable conversation and you're in an oxidative state. And that's going to be the most relaxing for your heart and your vascular system. It's going to help the endothelium to relax and expand and reduce blood pressure overall. And it helps to elevate HDL as well, which is the good cholesterol.
One last question, guys, from a young male, 26 he got his testosterone tested several times, 5 times in 3 months, and it came back at 4.7, 11, once again 11, 7 and 10. I don't know what measurement units that are, moles per liter. And his doctor has got a very bad image of TRT, he says. this is with the symptoms, tired, low libido, feeling fatigued, and so on. So since he's very young, he asks, does he has to get on TRT, or are there other ways to get these levels raised?
Need more data. For starters, he's probably in Europe based on the units. Secondly, get a new doctor. When a doctor tells you out of the gate as a blanket policy, I'm totally opposed to TRT. I mean, you're going into a biased environment asking for help. You know, you can't. You just can't approach it from that perspective. I'm not saying he needs TRT. I'm saying he's dealing with a healthcare provider who's already telling him, I don't like this. So find a new doctor for starters. Secondly, I hate to see young guys be subjective to a lifelong therapy out of the gate without further assessment. This guy needs to have his tropic hormones tested. We need to figure out if this is secondary hypogonadism. If so, why? Why are his gonadotropin levels low? Is this stress induced? Is it injury induced? Has he suffered concussions or TBI? We need to figure out a little bit more, and this is a more inclusive assessment that's needed. And obviously, someone who's not a fan of TRT is probably not going to have the tools to assess it properly. Get a proper assessment. If he needs to contact Dave Lee down in Australia, I know he's extremely proficient at doing these types of assessments, even though he cannot prescribe, or he's not a medical doctor. He's very, very good at what he does with regards to breaking down the root issue. And I know he's in our group. He can, I think this guy would be a good case for him to look at, or just seek somebody in Europe, if that's where he's from, to find out more. But yeah, I wouldn't tell this guy, go out and get TRT. It seems like his levels were very inconsistent, which means that it's probably induced by his pituitary rather than testicular failure. Okay, testicular failure tends to be pretty flat across the board, test after test. And whereas the gonadotropin signaling coming from the pituitary may be up or down depending on lifestyle and other factors going on. And it seems like there's more under the surface here. So further testing and assessment, and don't go jumping on therapy. I think you said he was 27. Don't go jumping on therapy at this point. Get a little further workup done, but with a different provider.
Yeah, this guy is in the Netherlands. He's called Jeroen, and he's in our Facebook group as well. So there he can contact you or Dave
Perfect.
Lee. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Send Dave Lee a PM and tell him we spoke about this in the video, and that he should have a further look with you.
Okay, great. So we are getting a lot of thank you guys for all the information in the chat box. So maybe we can round this up by leaving some about your some info about your business. Ali, how can people contact you for a consult if they would want to?
I am most active on the gram, on the Instagram, and my handle is @the Ali Gilbert. Otherwise, I'm in the group. You guys can find me, Ali Gilbert, and I do, online fitness and nutrition consulting as well as coaching. So if you guys want just a consult, or if you want to do long-term coaching, hit me up there. Otherwise, you can go to my website, ali-gilbert.com.
Okay. You, Gil, how can people reach you?
So I operate 4 medical offices in the United States, and we offer telemedicine. And outside of Idaho, we offer 49 states of telemedicine where we can treat, diagnose, prescribe, and continue to manage hormonal and other aspects for men looking to improve their health. The best way to reach me is my nutrition website, which is www.nextleveldietetics.com. The link is in the description of all the videos that I'm in. And once you go to nextleveldietetics.com, you can book a consult. That consult, I am extremely backed up at the moment and extremely busy, in all fairness. So what I tend to do is I tend to send out emails every so often to all those who have booked, and I ask, if you're based in the United States and you're seeking hormone help, please respond with your name and phone number below. I forward this to my clinic, and I take your consult fee and I move it to the clinic so you're not double billed, and they could do an intake for you, and you could be treated medically by the healthcare providers in my office. They're all trained by me. They all collaborate with me on a daily basis on anything that's complex, and you'll be in great hands. If it's a matter of being international and you just want to do an a la carte one-time consult, you just simply leave it as is, and I will book you in for a consult via Zoom, as we're doing here, one-on-one. But I do encourage all those in the United States to who do book through the website to respond and let me know their name and phone number. I will put them in touch with my clinic, and they'll be well taken care of.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ali, Gil, for all the information.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks to all the viewers for participating, asking the questions, and see you in another one. I'll round this up. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.